Hi everybody, this is Courtney, Fiber Fox Studios, and today I am going to go over the mosaics, all of the patterns that we've done, and kind of give you an idea of ways that you can mix and match them together. In this particular crochet along, they are I've released the patterns, total of 8 of them. They all work together. They're all with the same starting multiples on the chain to start, and then you're working with the same stitch count basically in whatever project you decided to do. However, I wanted to bring up that part of the reason why I filmed these individually, I started doing that after I'd done, I believe, just the first 2. I made it where I was not already joining on and continuing on up, because I wanted you to be able to mix these up and you be your own designer on whatever project that you're wanting. And I also gave instructions and did appropriately the additional videos when needed for how to use the pattern in a continuation. So by that I mean doing something such as this right here, where we keep doing the same pattern up and up and up for a series of rows, so that you can have a project that is created out of a solid one single pattern mosaic, or you could have large sections like this right here. I know my camera's down a little close, but this is about 7 inches wide, this particular panel that I'm showing you right here. So you could do the patterns in larger sections before moving on to another pattern. So I wanted to go over this with you today because we are finally wrapping up the mosaic, and I did this as my final pattern, which here's 2 different versions or 2 different colors of the same exact pattern. And you can use these as separators, like dividers in between different mosaics. You can of course do these as a series of mosaics so that you have something that looks similar to this right here, where you use the same pattern in multiple rows in repeats of it. This is 1 repeat of the pattern right here. This would be 1 repeat. So this is an example of if you were to use it in a 2 repeat way, this is what you would end up having a section look like. So we're going to jump in. I'm going to go ahead and raise my camera up a little bit so we can all see a little more of each of the mosaics. Alright, so right here, here's the first one that I began with. This is first pattern that I released, and it's a 2-part tutorial on this pattern because it is so many rows. This pattern alone is a very large pattern, and it of course can be done in the round. It can be done in a longer, wider rectangle for a blanket. You can make baby blankets and all kinds of things just by repeating this same pattern over and over and over. And it's explained in that video how you can just rewind to a certain point and start working this pattern over for multiple repeats of the pattern itself. So let's say you didn't want to do something like that though. You wanted to do this row and then move on to my pattern number 2. I show you in that video how you can link in specifically around other stitches. Sometimes when you're mixing up these patterns, you'll have a situation where you cannot do your drop double crochet because there's already an existing drop double crochet, as I'm showing right here. So in the second video, I show you how to work around that, because the second video goes from this pattern down here, and I move up in that video using the same piece of fabric that I'm creating onto this next pattern. So I did that so that I'd be able to show you right here. I basically did essentially a front post double crochet around this part of the mosaic here, this double crochet drop down. I just worked around it since I couldn't do a drop down right there, and it gave me the same continuing look. You don't really notice it looking at it. I'm pointing it out so you guys are noticing it. But in pattern number 2 in that tutorial, I show you how to go about doing this in case you run into that as you mix up the different patterns. And then in the third video, we moved on up to this mosaic right here. This is one of my favorites, and I work showing you how you just kind of join up from your existing work. It creates these other patterns, but it all kind of links together. So I wanted to bring this up because when I'm doing videos on through the series, I start working a new swatch each time, and that was to show you guys, if you're starting with that particular pattern, what you would do to start it. But I do explain in each of the videos that you can, you know, rewind back to row 3 for most of them. It's row 3 is where the mosaic starts. So this pattern right here, the last one released, I give you guys that information as well. Rewind back and you can start this pattern and start doing multiples of it. And this is another row 3. So you're able to fast forward the video. Let's say if you're starting out on your project and you're going to join them in a different series, you would just fast forward the video, which it's only just a few minutes as we move up these very basic rows here to start. The chain, row 1, row 2, those are very, very quickly reviewed in my videos. So it's just a very short fast forward, or you could just watch it through, and then you would start working at row 3, being able to start the mosaic design again. Now, for those of you who are loving the way this looks or not loving it, you can always mix them in whatever order you want. Here's another swatch where I have that same pattern that we just saw back here. I have that worked in a different color right here, and then we move on to the 4th and 5th tutorials showing these mosaics right here. This right here, to me, I love this. And I'm not saying that it wouldn't all look great, all joined up together, because it does. I'm going to try to turn this in a way that you guys can see. So I'm covering because it's the same exact motif right there. But as you can see, this working up, you can choose how many color changes you want. I personally, when doing like a baby blanket, for instance, I'm changing color or having a gradual color change like I've done here, where I start out with a little bit darker, different color tone of yarn, move to that one, now we're moving on up into this one. I like doing that in mosaics. I find that it adds a lot of extra interest. But some of you may not want to have this many colors all in one project. I mean, for me, the way that I've done them is, you know, 7, 8, 9 colors. And, you know, in my mosaic blankets. And that's the main thing that I've used the mosaic for. But to give you an idea, you can do a gradual color change. You could do this as a solid. You can have your, what I was calling throughout the videos, color A. This is the white color right here that I use to kind of make my designs pop out. This color, you could do a gradual color change starting on the opposite end of the color spectrum. You could start down here using where I have white. You could maybe have, you know, hot pink. And as you move up and you're transitioning your other colors, transitioning them, you could be changing that color A as well. I feel like the gradual color changes look the best when you're doing something like that. But again, this is your project to design. It is completely up to you. So, as we see right here, I have this one right here where I did a solid. So you could do these in solid sections as well, have more of like a repeat of the different patterns for a longer series. And that would give you a look like we have 2 of this one, and you could block it out. And so you would have a section, and you could do it, you know, I want 6 inches. So pick the patterns that are going to give you a close proximity to that count that you're wanting, or that measurement that you're wanting. And then you would work from one to the next, and you could transition that way. So that's going to give you more of like a little less busy. This is a little more busy look. I love it though. Don't get me wrong. It's how I do mine. But for some of you, I know that's just, it's going to be too much. You're not going to like that busyness. So now let's look at something we can do in between. So let's say that you really love, you know, 4 or 5 of the designs, and that's all you want to do, but you want to have some type of transition row in between. And that is where something like this comes into play. We're in between, and you have to kind of imagine that this is, you know, taking up all of our space. In between the different patterns, you could set it up so that you have, let me try to scoot this over a little bit, so that you have a row that separates the patterns. So if you take a look right here, Gonna line this up for you guys. In theory, we could have our pattern over here, ending pattern, a row of separation. Then we have this pattern working it all together. And it might be a little bit better for me to show you guys one of the other continual ones. So let's place this in here to give you guys a better idea of what I'm talking about. So we have our pattern over here on this side, a separation row. Now we're doing a pattern again. This in this case is the same pattern. You could do a completely different one. And then another separator row. So in between sections where you've done multiple repeats of the mosaic, you could pop in these really simple rows as a separator. This pattern right here is another good separator, just doing one repeat of the pattern and placing that in between so that you have a look like this. Curling up a little bit there, but that's okay. So if you take a look at that, that's also a great separator. This is a really short, easy repeat. The number of rows that you do on this particular design is not a lot. So you could use something like this in between your patterns so that you can have a separation. You could also do simple stripes. You could just do Apache Tears. I don't have a sample of that to show, but Apache Tears is a great mosaic pattern that will work well with what we're doing here. So you could just do rows of Apache Tears in between to do as a separator for your different patterns. Or of course you can work it all together and have a one giant, beautiful, multiple mosaic pattern blanket. So that's why I want to do this today for you guys, to kind of show you some of the options. You could also use something like this as a separator in between. You could use any of them. I mean, it's really, really up to you. I want you guys to kind of be the designer of your project and what you want. So it's completely up to you how you put these things together. If you watch the videos, you'll see you don't have to watch a lot of the beginning of the video to get the gist of what you're going to be doing when you want to start joining your next design on. So you can do solid projects that consist of just one design entirely. Like I said, I gave that information in those videos, or when necessary, like on this particular pattern, I did a separate tutorial for this to show you how to keep continuing up for additional repeats of the pattern. And I made that a part 2 of each one. It says the pattern continued. And in that, I make sure that I go enough rows up so that you don't have to jump to another video to remember what you did on the first go round, on the first repeat of the pattern. So I take you through that full process so you can see something like this, where we start here, we move up here. Let me turn it this way. We start down here, we move up here, and then I take you back to what's essentially where you started again, positioning wise. So I take you all the way through that in the second video from here to here, so that you can just keep going and going and going with that project without having to jump down to another video. So when you get started, you're going to make your color selections. You could change color, like a gradual color change, or use a color changing yarn that has a long color transition. So you want to have a long color that is going to gradually fade to another color. That's what I did here. That's what you're seeing here. I don't know if it's showing on camera quite as well. We're darker down here, and it's gradually fading up over here. Here's an even better example of that. We're darker down here, and we're gradually fading up. So this was a cake yarn. This happened to be the Premier Sweet Roll yarns. This cake yarn allowed me to do color transition without having to have 10 skeins of yarn out. But that's normally how it goes for me when I do one of my blankets, is I'll have a lot of skeins or scraps of yarn out, and I'm deciding my colors as I go. I know some of you are planners, so you're going to sit down and decide what colors you want in your blanket, and you're not going to let it really like speak to you as you work. That is totally fine. If you're doing that, you're going to design out or do your color selection right out in the beginning, and you'll decide exactly what you're doing, and then you'll start working, and you'll find that you can really come up with some really unique projects using these mosaics. You can use them for all different kinds of things. Some people are saying table runners is one of the things that they're going to be doing. That is a fantastic idea. You could do a mix of the patterns like I'm showing back here, or you could simply just pick one and do an entire project out of that. Hopefully this video is going to inspire you to change it up and to try some different things with the mosaic patterns. And more importantly, I'm hoping that you guys are going to be inspired enough to give it a try. A lot of people are saying, oh, it looks so hard. It looks so hard. It's not. I have learned through several people who have asked me to take a peek at some other videos or other designs. They're interested in learning those, but aren't able to quite follow those particular tutorials. And I've learned through doing that, from what I'm seeing out there on Mosaic, I do my mosaics very different. But I think the designer that's always inspired me to work in mosaics, I think she does hers this way as well. So there's different ways to do things out there. I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong, but I do think the way that I teach these and the way that another designer that I know of teaches these is the easiest way to learn, because you're not having to remember skipping and chaining things and stuff like that. That was very confusing to me in some videos that I tried to watch. So keep in mind, we all do things a little bit different. This might be different than what you've done in the past or listened to in the past, but the outcome on all of it, whether it's my video or someone else's, is amazing, and it's beautiful. Your back sides are going to be stripes. As you can see here, you can kind of see that very lightly where I was popping out those stitches, doing these double crochet drop downs in, in multiple series right here. There's quite a few there, and it creates almost a shadow effect on the other side of the project. And then you have ones like this where we don't have a lot of back-to-back double crochets, and we just have this kind of bubbly striping effect. It's great. There's a video also in this series on how you deal with all of these yarn ends, all the tails. But as some of you brought up, another designer has a double-sided border out there. I personally have not done a double-sided border. The border that's included in with this crochet along is the border that I use for all of these. However, if you're looking for if you're doing something like for a little boy, and you're looking for a more manly border, there are tons of them out here on YouTube. So you can always search for a different border than the lacy one that I have designed and have in this playlist for this particular mosaic design. Or crochet along. Whatever I'm calling it, right? So thank you guys, as always, for watching. I hope you give this a try. Try a small swatch. Do this one. Just do this one right here. Small swatch. You're going to love it. I promise. It is so fun. Mosaic is my go-to for everything to do with blankets. I really love this as blankets, pillows. I had mentioned in one of my podcasts that I'm working on a crochet pillow for my mom. And if you look, this right here is this design right here. I'm just using it in multiple repeats for the pillow. So I chose one design and I'm working it over and over to form the height of the project that I need in order to make her a really nice throw pillow. So there's a lot you can do with these. Don't be discouraged, and definitely don't think it's too hard. It is essentially single crochets. It's back loop only single crochets, to be very specific. And what I call these drop down double crochets, they're similar to something if you're doing like a front post double crochet. These are easier to me because they're just grabbing a loop, but they're double crochets and single crochets. to break it down in its, you know, what your skills need to be. If you can do a double crochet and you can do a single crochet, and those are US terms. If you can do those, you can do any of these. So please give it a try. Do a small swatch. Chain 26 and do any of the patterns. Chain 26 and do one. Just do the whole pattern, follow the tutorial, and see how easy it is. It is so much easier than it looks. So hopefully you guys are going to get brave. Give it a try. I know some of you are. I know some of you already are working on different projects. I would love to see pictures. So please make sure that you, if you are sharing on social media, I know not everyone does, but if you are, please use the hashtag FiberFoxStudios or FiberFoxStudiosCal so that I can see your work. So thank you guys so much for watching. As always, until next time, have a good one. Bye.